It's February 13th, 2017, a brisk, gray day in Delphi, Indiana. Two teenage best friends, Abigail Williams and Libby German, are enjoying a rare day off from school. Instead of staying home, they decide to head outdoors and explore the Monon High Bridge Trail, a peaceful yet isolated spot popular with locals. Abby and Libby, always inseparable, laugh as they walk the trail, capturing photos and videos along the way. But as they cross the historic bridge, something or someone stops them in their tracks. Libby, thinking quickly, pulls out her phone and begins to record. The grainy video shows a man approaching, his hands casually in his pockets. Then his voice, calm, chilling, and commanding. "Guys, down the hill." What happens next would remain a mystery for years. The next day, their bodies are discovered in a wooded area near the trail, their lives cut short in a horrifying act of violence. The small town of Delphi, once known for its quiet charm, is thrust into the national spotlight. The video Libby captured becomes a haunting clue, a small but crucial piece of the puzzle in a case that will grip the nation for more than 5 years. Who was the man on the bridge? Why did he target Abby and Libby? And how did the community of Delphi endure the pain of waiting years for justice? Today, we're diving deep into the Delphi Murders, exploring the lives of two remarkable girls, how the devastating crime that shocked the world, and the recent trial that finally brought answers. Abigail Abby Williams and Libby German weren't just best friends, they were like sisters. Abby, 13, was known for her creativity and love of art. Her family often found her sketching or experimenting with photography, dreaming of becoming an artist one day. She was sweet and quiet, but her friends say she had a playful sense of humor that could light up a room. Libby, 14, was Abby's perfect opposite, bold, outgoing, and full of life. She loved playing softball, solving puzzles, and spending time outdoors. She was fiercely protective of the people she loved, and her curious mind meant she was always asking questions and learning new things. Libby dreamed of working in forensics, inspired by her love of true crime shows. Together, Abby and Libby balanced each other perfectly. Whether they were exploring trails, hanging out with friends, or just making silly videos, their bond was unshakable. The small town of Delphi was their home, a place where they felt safe and free to be themselves. But that sense of safety was shattered on February 13th, 2017, when the girls set out for what should have been a simple hike. That morning, the girls had planned to meet up and spend the day outside. Libby convinced her older sister, Delphi German, to drop them off at the Monon High Bridge Trail around 1:35 p.m. Before leaving the car, Libby grabbed her phone, saying she wanted to take pictures. As the girls walked along the bridge, they likely had no idea they were being watched. When Abby and Libby didn't show up at their designated pickup spot later that afternoon, their families grew concerned. Calls to their phones went unanswered, and by evening, the girls were reported missing. A search party was quickly assembled, with friends, neighbors, and law enforcement combing the area. Flashlights illuminated the trails, and volunteers called out their names, hoping the girls had just gotten lost. But the next day, February 14th, 2017, brought devastating news. Around noon, a volunteer discovered the girls' bodies in a wooded area near Deer Creek, about half a mile from the Monon High Bridge. The crime scene was described as disturbing and deeply unsettling. Law enforcement immediately declared it a double homicide. The autopsy findings, later revealed during Richard Allen's trial, painted a chilling picture of what the girls endured. Both Abby and Libby suffered fatal wounds to their necks, inflicted with a serrated-edge weapon. Abby had a single 7-inch-long wound on the side of her neck, while Libby's injuries were even more severe. She sustained 4 or 5 separate cuts to her neck. Libby's 3 main neck blood vessels were severed, causing her to bleed out within 5 to 10 minutes. Despite the brutality, neither girl showed signs of defensive wounds, suggesting they were unable to fight back. Libby was found nude, while Abby was dressed in Libby's clothes. Abby's own clothing, including her jacket, jeans, and t-shirt, was discovered in a nearby river. This detail added a disturbing element to the case, raising questions about the killer's intentions and behavior. Abby's body was found with her hands raised vertically in what some described as a boxing position. Experts testified that this unusual posture indicated she may have been restrained or unconscious when she was killed. The autopsy findings, combined with the crime scene evidence, underscored the horrifying nature of the attack. Despite the lack of physical defensive wounds, investigators believe Libby fought back in another way, by recording the suspect. Surprisingly, despite extensive efforts, no direct DNA evidence tied a suspect to the crime scene. Investigators collected samples from the scene, but the physical evidence did not yield the definitive answers they hoped for. Experts speculate that environmental factors, such as exposure to the elements, may have degraded potential DNA. This lack of forensic clarity led to a reliance on other evidence, such as the unspent bullet and confessions, making this case an exception in modern crime solving, where DNA often plays a pivotal role. One of the most disturbing aspects of the Delphi murders was the apparent staging of the crime scene. Abby was found wearing Libby's clothes, while her own clothing was discarded in a nearby river. Libby, meanwhile, was found nude. Investigators believe these actions were deliberate and intended to confuse or shock anyone who found the scene. This detail, combined with how the bodies were positioned, suggested that the killer had a psychological need to control and manipulate, possibly pointing to someone with deep-seated anger or a desire to humiliate his victims. The staging made profiling the killer's behavior a key part of the investigation. The Delphi murders attracted national and even international attention almost immediately after the tragedy unfolded. News outlets and true crime enthusiasts were captivated by the mysterious circumstances, especially the eerie video and audio captured by Libby German. Online communities and social media platforms like Reddit and YouTube became hubs for amateur sleuths to share theories, analyze evidence, and speculate about the identity of the bridge guy. Some sleuths claimed to spot patterns in his walk or tried to analyze his clothing for clues. While these efforts sometimes helped keep the case alive, law enforcement had to manage the influx of tips, many of which were speculative or false, creating delays in the investigation. The widespread media coverage also added pressure on the police to deliver answers, but it ensured Abby and Libby's story stayed in the public eye for years. Law enforcement faced significant challenges in solving this case. They received over 50,000 tips, a staggering number for a small-town police department. Every lead had to be investigated thoroughly, which consumed time and resources. Additionally, they struggled with false confessions, misinformation, and dead-end tips. The lack of solid DNA evidence at the crime scene further complicated their efforts. The delay in connecting Richard Allen to the crime also highlighted some procedural oversights, such as his 2017 statement placing himself near the scene not being followed up thoroughly. These challenges, coupled with the high-profile nature of the case, made it one of the most complex investigations in Indiana's history. The case timeline spans 5 years of heartbreak and frustration for the families and the community. In February 2017, the video and audio clip were released, along with sketches of the suspect. By 2019, investigators released a second sketch, which looked noticeably different, confusing the public. The case went cold until 2022, when a new team re-examined old evidence and rediscovered Richard Allen's 2017 police interview, in which he admitted to being on the trail. When this was combined with the unspent bullet found at the crime scene that matched Allen's gun, investigators finally had enough to arrest him. The long delay in his arrest, despite key evidence being available early on, remains a point of frustration and reflection for investigators. Despite the horrifying nature of the crime, one thing became clear early on. Libby German's quick thinking was an act of incredible bravery. At some point during the hike, Libby realized something was wrong. She pulled out her phone and began recording, capturing video and audio that would become critical to the case. The footage showed a man walking toward the girls on the Monon High Bridge. He wore jeans, a blue jacket, and a hat. His hands were casually in his pockets, his demeanor calm yet chilling. Then came his voice, caught on the audio. "Guys, down the hill." This video became the centerpiece of the investigation. Law enforcement released portions of the footage to the public, along with sketches of the suspect. The man in the video, quickly dubbed the bridge guy, became the focus of a nationwide manhunt. Despite thousands of tips and countless interviews, the case went cold for years. In October 2022, a breakthrough finally came. Investigators arrested Richard Allen, a 52-year-old Delphi resident, charging him with the murders of Abby and Libby. Allen, a pharmacy technician at the local CVS, had lived in Delphi for years and had interacted with many locals, including the victims' families. Prosecutors linked Allen to the crime scene with a critical piece of evidence: an unspent bullet found between the girls' bodies. Investigators testified that the bullet had been cycled through a gun Allen owned. This discovery was pivotal in tying him directly to the scene. Ballistic analysis confirmed that the unique markings on the bullet matched Allen's firearm, a crucial piece of forensic evidence. Allen's arrest came after investigators reviewed a tip he had submitted himself in 2017. He told police he had been on the trail the same day the girls disappeared, but claimed he hadn't seen them. This statement, combined with the forensic evidence, led to his arrest. During his trial, prosecutors revealed shocking details about Allen's confessions. He admitted to the murders more than 60 times, describing how he used a box cutter to kill the girls and staged the crime scene. Despite these admissions, Allen pleaded not guilty, and his defense team argued he was mentally unstable at the time of his confessions. Richard Allen's trial in 2024 was deeply emotional. Family members of Abby and Libby sat in the courtroom as graphic crime scene photos were presented. Major Pat Cicero testified about the positioning of Abby's body and the heartbreaking detail of Libby's tears mixing with her blood. Prosecutors relied heavily on Allen's own words, playing recordings of his confessions for the jury. They also highlighted the forensic evidence, including the unspent bullet found at the scene. These details painted an undeniable picture of guilt. After 19 hours of deliberation, the jury found Allen guilty of 2 counts of murder. He now faces up to 130 years in prison, with sentencing scheduled for December 20, 2024. Early in the investigation, behavioral experts created a profile of the bridge guy. They believed he was likely a local with knowledge of the trail and the surrounding area. He may have displayed antisocial tendencies, such as a lack of empathy or remorse, and could have been someone who blended into his community to avoid suspicion. Theories about the killer's motive ranged from opportunistic violence to a calculated, premeditated attack. These profiles were instrumental in guiding the investigation and understanding the mindset of the perpetrator. After his arrest, Richard Allen's behavior raised questions about his mental state. During his time in custody, he exhibited erratic behavior, including self-harm, banging his head on walls, and reportedly eating his own feces. His defense team argued that months in solitary confinement and the pressure of the trial led to a breakdown in his mental health. Additionally, they questioned the reliability of his confessions, claiming he was in a fragile mental state when he admitted to the murders. However, prosecutors pointed out that his confessions were consistent and detailed, aligning with evidence from the crime scene. The crime scene itself provided insights into the psychological profile of the killer. The staging of the bodies, the deliberate placement of clothing, and the chilling manner of the attack suggested someone who craved control and wanted to leave a statement. Experts have speculated that the killer may have derived satisfaction from the public attention the case received, feeding his sense of power. The murders shattered the peaceful fabric of Delphi, a town where violent crime was almost unheard of. Parents became more protective, and children were no longer allowed to explore freely as they once did. The sense of security was replaced by fear, and the community struggled to heal. Local businesses and schools united to support the victims' families, organizing vigils and fundraisers. The tragedy forever changed Delphi, reminding everyone that even small towns are not immune to acts of unspeakable violence. Abby and Libby's families have turned their grief into action, becoming advocates for justice. They established initiatives to support other families of missing or murdered children and worked tirelessly to keep Abby and Libby's story in the public eye. Their advocacy efforts also included raising funds for reward money and collaborating with law enforcement to push the investigation forward. Their courage and determination have inspired countless others to speak out and seek justice for their own loved ones. The Delphi Community Middle School renamed its library the Abby and Libby Memorial Library, creating a space that honors the girls' love of learning and exploration. The families continue to celebrate their memories, ensuring that Abby and Libby are remembered not just as victims, but as vibrant, loving teenagers whose lives impacted so many. Their story has also inspired a renewed focus on safety measures, from enhanced trail security to broader discussions about community vigilance. Abigail Williams and Libby German were more than victims. They were daughters, sisters, and best friends who brought light and joy to those around them. Libby's bravery in recording her attacker ensured that their story would not be forgotten, and Abby's kind spirit continues to inspire all who knew her. While Richard Allen's conviction provides some measure of justice, the pain of losing Abby and Libby will never fade. Their families remain steadfast in their commitment to honoring their memories and ensuring their legacies live on. Thank you for watching and joining us in remembering Abby and Libby. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to help keep their memory alive. Turn on notifications for updates on this case and other true crime stories. Stay safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time.